We're going to talk about Heat Bulls first because despite winning all 3 meetings against Miami, Chicago, injuries, feeling a little bit like an underdog. Lonzo Ball, Trey Jones, and Miami has gotten the best of it in 2 consecutive play-in meetings. But both of those games are in Miami. Round 3 set to take place in Chicago.
This NBA season was one of the weirdest in the history of the Miami Heat franchise. It seemed like everything that could go wrong for the Miami Heat just simply did, and there wasn't anything they could do about it. They lost their franchise player after he refused to play for the team. Their Hall of Fame head coach seemingly regressed, and to top it all off, they became stuck in mediocrity. The Miami Heat have never been the type to tank. Pat Riley would never let it happen, but this was the season to do it, and they couldn't even do that right. They got locked into the play-in, and in a win-or-go-home game against the Chicago Bulls, we saw what the 2025 Miami Heat are truly made of. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Aside from that, weird announcement, I'm gonna be at Coachella weekend too, so if you find me, come say what's up. I'll be posting where I'm at on Instagram at TheFlightMike, and now that we get all of that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? It really seems like the Miami Heat are absolutely screwed. I mean, they were put in the worst position possible with this game, and it's going completely under the radar because we have some other storylines that we've been covering on this channel. On one hand, if the Miami Heat were to lose, they're going to be known as one of the biggest jokes in the entire NBA, and the media will be clamoring about how important Jimmy Butler was to them, especially after his 38-point performance against the Memphis Grizzlies in his play-in game, and that they were never worthy of making an NBA Finals. However, on the other hand, if they were to win this game, their draft pick come June just gets worse, and they lose out on their chance at one of the top players in this class, and they would have one more game to determine whether or not they keep their pick at all, because their pick this year technically belongs to the OKC Thunder. It just happens to be lottery protected. If Miami were to win both of their play-in games and go on to face the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs, the only first-round pick they'd own would belong to the Golden State Warriors, and that pick isn't really anything special. Plus, they're not good enough to compete against Cleveland, so they would be making the playoffs for nothing. The crazy part is they literally had it down. Fresh off of the Jimmy Butler trade, it looked like the Miami Heat were trying to tank, going 4-17 and lost a whopping 10 straight games, not only giving them a chance at a top 5 pick, but also giving them a chance at Cooper Flag. Then they just decided to lock in out of nowhere, winning 6 straight after breaking the losing streak and finishing the season 8-4 after that game. None of this makes any sense. You're winning the battle, but you're certainly losing the war. They're either the most pathetic team in basketball, or they look like they can win a 7-game series against anybody, and there's no in-between with this team, and there hasn't been all season.
What we saw tonight was Miami basically writing its own fate. We knew it. We knew what the stakes were going into this one, and if it was as bad an omen as you could get tonight.
This inconsistency that Miami has dealt with all season would be put to a massive test in the play-in when they faced off with the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls came into this game red hot, finishing the season 6-1 in April, and heavily relying on their brand new superstar, who, I can't believe I'm saying this, is Josh Giddey. If you've been sleeping or living under a rock or just haven't been paying attention to Chicago Bulls basketball, Josh Giddey is the craziest redemption story. He has been absolutely unbelievable as of late, and he's been even more unbelievable against the Miami Heat as the season has gone on. In the regular season, Miami and Chicago faced off 3 times, once in Miami and twice in Chicago. Chicago would win all 3 of those games, including their most recent one, where Tyler Hero made one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen, taking a fast break 3 over an easy dunk in crunch time. And for those of you guys wondering, when I say it's one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen, that's sans the Nico Harrison trading of Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. But I digress. In these 3 games, Josh Giddey has averaged 26 points, 10.3 rebounds, and 10 assists, showing absolute dominance against a backcourt that really couldn't do anything about it. Miami's backcourt is tiny, and outside of Davion Mitchell, there aren't any guys who can match up with Josh Giddey defensively. I mean, mean, just look at these plays from their matchup earlier this month, for example. This play starts with Bam Adebayo guarding Josh Giddey up top, which in itself shows how important keeping him contained is. But the play really starts after a screening Matas Buzelis forces Alec Burks, a 33-year-old and a notoriously bad defender, to switch on to Josh Giddey. After he gets the matchup he likes, he calls for an ISO and just starts to go to work. Giddey has a 3-inch height difference over Burks, but more importantly, he's stronger than Burks is. Because of this, Josh Giddey just runs straight through Alec Burks, forcing his way into the paint and putting up an easy floater before a help defender has a chance to rotate over. The next play is another example of Giddey using his body to create pressure at the rim. However, this one's different. Instead of having Alec Burks as the only thing keeping him from getting to the rim, this time he has a lengthy Haywood Highsmith guarding him, who does a great job forcing him to pick up the ball under the rim. Here, he could have put the ball up, but he noticed a shot-blocking rookie Khalil Ware behind him, ready to send his shot to the stands. He sees this and he sends the ball out to the perimeter, knowing that because there are 2 guys on him in the paint, there is a guaranteed man open at the 3-point line. The ball just has to find him. The ball makes its way from Nikola Vucevic to Kevin Huerter, who was the open man, but Davion Mitchell would rotate around from the corner, leaving Giddey's man Highsmith to rotate over to the corner to ensure that there aren't any open Bulls. Giddey notices a mistake though. Instead of sticking in the paint and playing Highsmith's rotation, Khalil Ware rotates back out to the perimeter, playing his previous matchup, Nikola Vucevic, who was already picked up in the rotation, leaving Josh Giddey wide open to cut to the paint for an easy layup. Giddey has been Miami's biggest problem against Chicago all season, and realistically has been a massive problem for whoever faces Chicago since the Levine trade. And Miami had a chance to slow him down for a 4th and final time this season, and the most important game of the year for both teams. Could Miami slow down Josh Giddey and get their season back on track, or did Giddey and the Bulls send Miami to the lottery, showing the world that they do indeed need Jimmy Butler? We found out, and this is how it went. The game started unbelievably fast for the Miami Heat. Nikola Vucevic and the Chicago Bulls really struggled to stop the Heat in the paint, allowing Miami to create easy lanes like this one. But that's not the only thing Chicago couldn't stop. Miami was also red hot from 3 to start the first quarter, and the duo of Tyler Hero and Andrew Wiggins would combine for 21 of Miami's first 28 points. They looked like they came to play. Bam Adebayo would start the game on Giddey, but after Khalil Ware picked up 2 quick fouls, Bam would be forced off of Giddey, which was the worst case scenario for the Heat defense. Giddey started to look like the same way he did over the regular season, including this beautiful backdoor cut. But the problem was Tyler Hero kept answering right back. At this point, he was up to 14 points on 6 of 6 shooting in the first quarter. The first quarter of this one would end with a score of 39-28. Miami's offense looked absolutely unbelievable, and 39 points in a quarter is a ton and ties the most Chicago has given up in a first quarter this whole season. But somehow Chicago ended the first with momentum, after the steal from Matas Buzelis with time ticking down, followed by a buzzer-beating 3 that he barely got off to put Chicago within 11. Miami would get that momentum right back though to start the second quarter. After another Tyler Hero bucket and this absolute dime from Hero to Khalil Ware for the easiest dunk of his career, Miami and Chicago would continue to go bucket for bucket, and after a while, it would become 3 for 3, with Duncan Robinson and Nikola Vucevic going back and forth making shots, including this impressive Robinson shot over Vucevic in the corner to put Miami up 20. At this point, Chicago had been getting destroyed in the paint all game, and that had to become a focal point for them if they wanted to come back and win this one. Tyler Hero continued to be perfect throughout the second, and every single time Chicago hit a big shot to spark a comeback, he would shut it down with a huge shot or a timely pass. He'd finish the first half with 243 points on 8 of 8 shooting, and the half would end with Miami up 71-47, with Chicago literally getting booed to the locker room. I'm sure half of the Miami Heat fans out there were booing too, because at this point they just want their lottery pick. Now Kevin Huerter and the Chicago Bulls would come out swinging in the second half, quickly making Miami's 24-point lead an 18-point lead, and that on top of some stellar defense from Nikola Vucevic to start the half gave the Chicago Bulls some much needed momentum to spark that comeback they've been trying to start for a full quarter at this point. That momentum would continue, with the Bulls showing the most life they've shown all game thanks to a couple of huge buckets from Matas Buzelis, and it looked like Miami very well may be choking yet another second half lead. Chicago even started making the threes that they were missing in the first half, but Miami just kept staying alive, continuing to answer back the same way they did in the first half, and the task was getting harder and harder for Chicago. The third quarter was a super confusing one. Chicago outplayed Miami a ton, but at the end of it, it was still a 14-point game at the end of the quarter. I mean, Talon Horton Tucker of all people was hitting ridiculous fadeaways at the end of the quarter. Miami had a terrible quarter and was still able to hold on to a double-digit lead. If they were able to play how they did in the first half, they'd put this game away and make their way to Atlanta and potentially lose their first round pick. If not, they would blow a massive 20+ point lead in the biggest game of the season and become absolute jokes. It was truly the worst case scenario for Miami because either way you lose. The Chicago crowd was loud to start the fourth quarter. They'd hit a few threes, but the moment that made it really feel like Chicago might win this game was when Tyler Hero would hit a huge fading three at the top of the key before it would be called back with an offensive foul due to Hero kicking his leg out and tripping Matas Buzelis. There had been a few momentum shifts in this game, but this was clearly the biggest one yet. The story of the game would continue though. Miami would get that momentum right back after a huge Davion Mitchell block on Kobe White after playing some of the best on-ball defense we've seen all season, followed by a floater from Mitchell to give Miami their 17-point lead back, who played fantastic basketball in this game. Tyler Hero would then all but put this game away. With 5.5 to go, Hero would catch Kevin Huerter on an island and drive on in baseline for what has become an easy layup for him, bringing his points total on the night to 38, the same amount of points that Jimmy Butler had the night before. At the end of the day, it was absolute dominance from Tyler Hero and a lack of consistent offense from Chicago, and those were the main differences in this game. Despite losing every game they played against Chicago in the regular season, the Miami Heat were able to pull it off when it mattered most, and I can't even say that's a good thing. Miami moves on and will be heading to Atlanta for one final play-in game, and if they are to win that game, they can say goodbye to their first round pick. On paper, you'd much rather make the playoffs than not, but in Miami's case, this pick is so important to them. They're not good enough to compete without Jimmy Butler, and even if they weren't planning on using that pick on an incoming rookie, they could have potentially included it in a massive trade package for somebody like maybe Kevin Durant to help open their championship window back up. Miami screwed themselves, and there genuinely is not a positive scenario that comes from winning this play-in game for the Heat. Their future is relying on Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, and that's just not good enough. Heat fans better pray that they lose to the Hawks, because if not, say goodbye to any hopes of a championship in the near future.